Nice. Yeah, pleasure to be here, everybody. It's kind of a first time that I'm actually participating in a conference from the village where it all started for me. So, in case you're wondering what the weird background is, I'm sitting in the Serra da Lusa mountain range in central Portugal, in a formerly abandoned village, as you can see around me. We basically bought the village here and about 8 hectares of land in 2017, and that is what got me on the path towards regenerative agriculture, got me interested in it. And then in 2019, I did a 1 year pilgrimage visiting all the regenerative farmers I could find in Western Europe. Wasn't that many at that point. It was 60 farmers, and I stayed and worked with those farmers. And from those conversations with the farmers, developed the idea of climate farmers, which I founded together with my co-founder Ivo Dig in summer of 2020. And what I will be sharing with you here is the theory of change that we're having. So it's basically a little bit distilled as much as possible into a 5 to 10 minute conversation, the learnings that we have made in working with farmers across Europe and supporting them in the transition to regenerative agriculture. So I think seeing that you're all here in this conference, I'm assuming we can all agree on this one. The current agricultural system has failed us in many different ways, not only in providing us with nutritious food, but also in staying in line with the planetary boundaries, which I'm sure you have all heard about. Agriculture is currently responsible for 24% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and it's responsible for crossing 4 of the 9 planetary boundaries, especially also the biodiversity loss being one of the crucial ones due to a lot of our practices that we currently are using. The good thing is we do have a potential solution with regenerative agriculture. We know already that it really helps with the biodiversity crisis, that it really helps with also water shortages through the sequestration of water in the soil. It helps with CO2 emissions through CO2 sequestration. It helps with adaptation to climate change, and also with quite practical issues that farmers are experiencing in terms of the rising fuel and fertilizer costs, which are many times lower in regenerative agriculture practices. So what are we talking about? When we're talking about regenerative agriculture, we are talking about agriculture which is focusing on building up soil health. As part of that, it reverses erosion, it builds biodiversity, and it captures carbon. And all of these things we already know for a long time. There are papers from Wageningen University from the 80s and 90s already talking about these benefits. However, despite the hype that we have especially experienced in the last 2 years and the many commitments that we have heard from global food corporates on the topic nowadays, we still don't see regenerative agriculture being adopted at scale. Now, I think this is a good point to mention that we, and as climate farmers and me personally, are working in the European context. So everything that I'm saying in this presentation is applicable for the European context. I don't really know what's going on in the rest of the world, but I know that in Europe, we still don't have more than a few thousand farmers practicing regenerative agriculture. And we have 10.5 million farmers in the European Union. So if we are now at 0.1%, then that's already quite a lot. And there's still a very long way to go. If we are talking about scaled regenerative agriculture, what do we mean? We believe that what we need to get to is 10% of all European farmland to be under regenerative management, because we have seen that it has an amazing effect when you bring farmers on regenerative farms. Farmers are not impressed by PowerPoint presentations, but they are impressed when they're going on a farm and they're seeing the effects of regenerative agriculture. And we believe that if we have 10%, then we have enough model farms for other farmers to visit. And from there on, we see an avalanche effect because we can see how it actually works in practice. In order to get there, we also believe that we need to recognize that regenerative agriculture makes sense economically. Farmers are first-hand business people. They need to run a profitable farm. And so we need to show that regenerative agriculture is profitable and not only benefiting the planet, but actually also benefiting the farm health and the well-being of the farmer by providing more financial income. How do we get there? We have two ways, two LAs, which is knowledge and finance. On the knowledge side of things, we very much focus on the mindset. Over the last 50 years, farmers have consecutively been pushed to focus exclusively on yield and nothing else. For example, through the Common Agricultural Policy, where you get rewarded based on size of farm and what you're planting, but not really looked at what's going on the farm and what the ecosystem services are. So we are supporting farmers in this mindset shift away from a focus on yield towards a focus on soil health and on checking what are actually the inputs on the direct environment of the farm that I'm in. In terms of adequate financing, we believe that we need to measure what regeneration is taking place, and then we need to pay as society for the regeneration that's going on there. This could be through subsidies, but it could also be through other mechanisms. For example, right now we're also speaking with insurance companies who are to pay major damages to due to flooding. For example, my hometown Geilenkirchen in Western Germany got flooded 2 years ago, and there was 31 billion euros in damages in those floods, which you might remember in Germany and the Netherlands. These floods would not have happened in the same way if we would have healthy soils, which would be absorbing water. So this is one of the many interesting areas that we could be looking into. Among others, also, for example, carbon sequestration and biodiversity increase, which we will later be getting to. So we have been testing a lot, and we've been speaking a lot with farmers, especially in 2020 and in 2021. And since last year, we are actively engaged in 5 key projects, which we believe are bringing most value for farmers and for systems change towards more regenerative practices. The first part is a farm enterprise analysis. So we are sitting down with farmers that are getting in contact with us, and we're helping them to analyze what the current situation on their farm is, what the prediction on the farm would be in terms of impact of climate change, what the profitable parts of the farm are, and which parts of the farm would make most sense to transition towards regenerative agriculture. We do not recommend to transform an entire farm at once, but to start with parts of the farm, because it's a step-by-step journey. We're also providing our farmers with a free community, because many of the farmers that I visited on my farm tour in 2019 have reported to me that they were very surprised that there's actually other people doing the same thing. I was very surprised that all of these leading regenerative farmers did not know of each other. So we organized a conference where we brought all of them together in the world's only farmers castle in southern Germany. And we are organizing online and offline events for farmers. And we also connect them via WhatsApp. Initially, we tried to do Slack and Mighty Gathering and everything, but it was very hard to get farmers on these platforms, and they love to engage with each other, but they all had WhatsApp and they wanted to stay on WhatsApp. So this is what we're using right now. And here we see a lot of engagement and a lot of support that farmers are giving each other in terms of practices, but also just life in general. Then we got a lot of feedback from our farmers that they want to have support in figuring out what the transition towards regenerative agriculture could look like in their context, but it's very hard to filter who are the ones that can actually help them and that know what they're talking about, and who are the ones which have a fancy website but not much behind it. And that's why we built a farmer-backed consultant agency, where all of the consultants are verified by farmers from our community, so that farmers that book a consultant through us know that they actually are booking someone that can really help them, and they can also check with other farmers who that consultant has worked with in the past. Then we're working on something which we call a transition blueprint. Now, the transition towards regenerative agriculture is very context specific, but despite that, there are still certain patterns which you can follow. So what we're looking at is, as we said already, we start with a mindset of the farmer. We look at what is the personal context, who are the different stakeholders, what do the stakeholders want for their personal life balance. Then we look at the farm business context, which are the parts of the farm which can best be improved, which are not profitable. What is the ecological context of the farm? What is the soil type? What are the weather conditions? Then we're making an implementation plan together with our experts, and we match them with other peers. And then we're collecting data on the transition process on a yearly basis and report back to the farmer how the transition is going. In order to do this, we developed our own MRV technology, which is monitoring, reporting, and verification, which is a combination of satellite imagery. Here we're using Sentinel-2, which is a freely available satellite from the European Union, as well as soil analysis, as well as modeling through the help of our academic partners, such as, for example, Wageningen. With this, we have one tool which we're having for farmers to get paid, which is what we call our regeneration credit, where we're essentially measuring the increase in carbon in the soil, the increase in water retention in the soil, the increase in biodiversity, and are also involved in some studies on nutrient density in regenerative agriculture. And all of this we bundle together, and then we match the farmers with corporates in their direct local proximity, who want to compensate their CO2 emissions by supporting a farmer in the transition to regenerative agriculture. Here we're very much focusing on the local factor, on re-establishing a relationship between the corporate and the farmer. So we also enable the companies which are buying the credits from a farmer to visit that farm as well, so they can see with their own eyes what's going on the farm. And closing off with some of the farmers which we are working with, such as, for example, Francisco Alves, who is a 700-hectare farmer in southern Portugal, who had a lot of issues with drought. He is doing holistic management now, and he's integrating trees into his farming, and he now has green grass in June, which has before been unheard of in his regions. And this is some of the practices which he's having, such as keyline design, the multi-species agroforestry system, and also an olive and almond grove that is planted together with us on 30 hectares of the farm. Another farmer is Benetriz Ganadera, who's a 400-hectare farmer in southern Spain. And this is a very interesting one because we see that women are one of the driving forces in regenerative agriculture. Traditionally, there's less than 10% female farmers in agriculture. In regenerative agriculture, we see this number substantially higher, and we see many women who are taking over the farm of their parents as the first women in their family history, and then taking it on the regenerative path. So is also the case with Beatrice, who is the fourth generation and the first female farmer who's running the farm there. She is also establishing holistic grazing, and there's a multi-species grazing system here, where she's combining essentially sheep, goats, and cows, as it would also happen in nature. And then last but not least, we have Juan Manuel from Alcano Quilo, who's also from southern Spain, who is an arable crop farmer, who is with us also integrating animals on the farm, and especially establishing better water systems, which he's financing through the regeneration credits. He's currently working on building a lagoon on his farm in order to have a natural way of increasing his own water storage capacity. He's doing no-till and direct seeding practices, and also integrating multi-species grazing systems. And if you are curious now, you can just go to Climate Farmers, or you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can get in touch if you are interested in either supporting farmers in the supply chain and transitioning to regenerative agriculture, or supporting some of our farmers by purchasing our regeneration credits from them. Looking forward to hear from you and wishing you a great conference.
So what we would love to do is actually make ponds in the field, so like big ponds that also gigantically increase biodiversity. So it's a fantastic thing to have in your field anyway, and somehow come up with a system to store the water that the ponds capture in autumn and winter when it actually rains, and use that water again in the garden in spring and summer. I was actually always sort of wrestling with the divide between nature and culture that we make in our society. And I wanted to study biology and art at the same time. It was not allowed by the exam committee of the university. And I always had the feeling that this split is something we should somehow come to a new ways of living together with non-humans, plants, animals, microbes, and have a sort of fundamental different society. And how can we actually tackle issues that are so urgent right now, climate change, biodiversity loss, but also a loss of community at the same time. And when I was looking into that together with my partner, Ricardo Cana Mateo, a Spanish biologist, we sort of figured out that the way to come to a human and nature inclusive landscape that could actually address all those issues is regenerative farming. The agricultural plots that we have now are sort of lost plots, I would say. They're completely made for fossil fuel agriculture, which means that you can only come there 10 times a year. You plow, you mow, you spray, you harvest, and you go home. But you're not bound anymore to the ground. And for this kind of agriculture, you need to be there. So we were really looking for a place where we had the trust that we could be here long term. And we found that here in this specific plot, we're in a state of Grootstal, because the Baroness who actually owns this plot is also a transition coach. So she immediately understood what our farm was about.
She's a real Baroness.
Yeah, she's a real Baroness. Yeah. She lives over there in a real Baroness house. Yeah. this was still grass field in April. So lots of work. But the market garden is it's really amazing how fast you can actually build a quality market garden with just the simple ingredients of compost, wood chips, and just embracing all kinds of life. And then it goes really fast. Our soil life is now really thriving. My plants, I mean, it's the end of October and they're still growing. So yeah, that has been amazing. Putting up the water system too late, that was really challenging because we especially had already a very dry spring and of course a very dry summer. So the water system was not in place, I think until June fully. That was super challenging. Yeah, because that meant like 2 hours extra of work watering the garden. Yeah, we are also working with another entrepreneur who has cows, and he grazes the nature areas. And he is collaborating with us. I call it like lease cows. So he comes in, he grazes our field, and sort of in exchange for part of the lease, and then he can leave the cows for as long as the holistic grazing allows for it. So that gives us the input for of the cows, which is wonderful. But we have a plot of 5 hectares, so you cannot have cows there permanently. So we have our chickens permanently, and the cows come in and out. So what we would love to do is actually make ponds in the fields, so like big ponds that also gigantically increase biodiversity. So it's a fantastic thing to have in your field anyway, and somehow come up with a system to store the water that the ponds capture in autumn and winter when it actually rains, and use that water again in the garden in spring and summer. So how can we come up with a system that we can actually store the water from the ponds in some kind of prototype? Perhaps that could work as a regenerative prototype for a lot more farmers, and water the garden with that without disturbing the pond in the most crucial months in spring, in which, for of course, amphibians and for a lot of other species, it's an essential habitat. That would be great, yeah. I think we need to come up with a solution for the water issue, because it's a very urgent issue, and I really believe if we do nothing about it, then they might even put in a stop on the pumping, which would be disastrous.
We want to create a resilient forest garden, basically, which has an integrated market garden, which is more efficient in a way. And then the forest garden has more a long-term goal of creating fertility over a longer time, storing water, creating shade. And
we actually farming about 1/3 of what we could farm here. So we would like to regenerate that part of the land.
I studied cinematography in Holland, and that was before 2006 already. And then in 2006 I decided to come to Portugal. I realized that I wanted to do something more with ecology, so I wanted to use those skills that I had developed for making documentaries and something that was more into ecology.
And I studied nutrition, so I was already into food and into healthy food, but I definitely felt that I didn't know enough about where food came from and how it was produced and how that had influence on our health as well.
I think in 2011 we really seriously got to doing that, making a documentary about Ernst Gotch, who inspired us immensely.
We spent 15 days with Ernst Koch, which was amazing and changed our life. So we after a few days we put our camera on the tripod and we decided to really go hands-on.
I think what we have learned, besides the fact that this is a Mediterranean climate and has very hot summers,
Yes.
so we will need always a lot of water.
Yeah, I mean there's like 4 or 5 months without rain sometimes.
Yes, yeah. We want to create a resilient forest garden, basically, which is has an integrated market garden, which is more efficient in a way, and then the forest garden has more a long-term goal of creating fertility over a longer time, storing water, creating shade, and
we actually farming about 1/3 of what we could farm here, so we would like to regenerate that part of the land. It needs obviously quite an investment for the labor and for the compost and seeds and plants and trees and tools that we need, and water, irrigation, all those things to set up that part of the land. Yes.
I think our farming is really based on these permaculture principles where diversity is key. So I think the goals for the future for Lugar da Terra and our little family is to make a very nice diversified homestead with a lot of different angles where people can learn, where people can come and experience how food is being produced on a sustainable way, how the soil can be treated differently, and how we can create soils that are more rich in carbon and more rich in organic matter over time. This is essential to new farming and to regenerate land.
Yeah, definitely.
We want to go on with definitely planting more trees in the next years. We have kind of a sponsorship model for fruit trees and nut trees. So yeah, people can support us so that we can buy the trees and manage them, because the management is really important and it's often forgotten and costs a lot of money and time.
So it would be like adopting a tree, basically.
Yeah. I studied organic farming in a small university near Berlin, and I kind of specialized in agroforestry doing that, so I wrote my both thesis, the bachelor's and the master's, in this topic field. And I had a lot of time during the studies to kind of look outside the box, so we went traveling a lot and gain experience on different farms, on different conditions. And I was more and more impressed by alternative systems like permaculture, agroecology, agroforestry, regenerative agriculture. And then when we started the farm, it was more or less people that we kind of work in that field. The farm more or less found us, and we found the farm, because the land is owned by the church, and they were looking for people to set up an organic farm and take care about the land. And that was exactly what we wanted at that point. So we got together and started.
Sounds very easy going. There was no long negotiations.
Yeah, well, it sounds pretty easy going, but it took quite a long time to get all the regulations done. So we started more or less without any contracts for 2.5 years, 3 years more or less, until we got the contracts for the farm place. But then everything went fine. Well, one of the biggest learnings I would say is that the day has only like 24 hours, and there's really a lot of stuff enough to do when you set up with different branches. So there's a market garden, there's vegetable land, we have chickens. We have overtook an abandoned place, so we had a lot of construction going all of them. Yeah, so the Pareto principle more or less learned what it means. Yeah, well, we want to go on developing the farm holistically. So we see it as kind of an organism. So and we want to go on with definitely planting more trees in the next year. Implement agroforestry systems. One with planting trees. One of the main plans for the next year. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really to finance the trees, so that we have kind of a sponsorship model for fruit trees and nut trees. So yeah, people can support us so that we can buy manage the management. Really important project. That's a lot of money and time.
So it would be like adopting a tree, basically.
Yeah.
What we are trying to do here is to make the farm better and more efficient on the same surface. We want to be even more independent from the company where we sell transplants from. Temperature and humidity, we have to be able to control it better. We are thinking about some kind of passive solar greenhouse system. With 3,000 or 4,000 euros, we can do this. Yeah. I basically started really small. I had a sort of a vegetable garden project with my brother. I was mainly into the vegetable growing itself and started some research on that field. And so I stumbled upon guys like Jean-Martin Fortier and Elliot Coleman and Curtis Stone on YouTube. They were basically about intensive organic farming on a real small acreage. So that fitted into my context. And that was the starting point for me to experiment. The region around Ghent was known for its ornamental flowers growing, and they were mostly grown in heated greenhouses, but at a certain point it wasn't viable anymore to heat these greenhouses. So there are a lot of greenhouses abandoned or not really in use anymore. They are a bit old, but the basic structure of these greenhouses is perfect for non-heated organic vegetable growing year-round. We found it online, and this is a really small plot. The greenhouse seems big, but the plot itself is like a half hectare. Mm-hmm. So I think most farmers who were thinking about this place, if this could be interesting, we're looking for something bigger. But I was already into this intensive farming. I already experimented with that, and I could think this was possible in here. So I was the only one who dared to jump and to do this. We are experimenting with the width between the plants. So often there's still, if the cabbages are really small, for example, there's still like 40 centimeters of half a meter between them, with the possibility to grow something in between that it's much more faster. Yeah, it's trial and error. But if some things fit together, like onions and carrots or leeks and carrots, yeah, it gives you an extra harvest out of the same surface, so it's really cool. I have some examples that work, and I think that the book of La Ferme du Bec et Loin has like 35 possible systems where vegetables grow together. So they already have a large library of things that could work. What we are trying to do here is, in the following years, is to make the farm better and more efficient on the same surface. So if we finish a crop, we try to replant it, then if it's possible the next week or the same day. So this is an always evolving process of making this more efficient. We are already working in the greenhouse, so this is a perfect place to grow the transplants. But we want to be even more independent from the company where we sell transplants from. But then temperature and humidity, we have to be able to control it better. So we are thinking about some kind of passive solar greenhouse system. I think because we can incorporate it in the main greenhouse, we can, with 3,000 or 4,000 euros, we can do this. Yeah.
Cool. Let's make it happen. Thanks.
Okay.
I really would like to drastically reduce our water consumption here in the producing of vegetables, and therefore I would love to install drip irrigation for big parts of the field, and combine that with a mulch.
My husband and I, we've always been interested into being member of a CSA, but most of the others are a few kilometers far from Hitzacker. And I always thought it doesn't make sense to drive myself once a week for 20 kilometers to then have a low carbon produced vegetable in my basket. And that's why we really wanted to have our CSA here in Hitzacker. Everybody told us that it will be very difficult to find a gardener, and we were lucky to have some interested gardeners to appear and to introduce themselves. And Jonas said he's somewhere in France and he's looking where he wants to settle down, and we thought, okay, maybe he wouldn't call again. And then he called next. He was already in Hitzacker because he was watching for a flat.
Yeah, it was basically like that. After my 4 years training in biodynamic agriculture, I took like 1 year off to roam around a bit and see what life's like without farming. And then at some point I was on my way back from Portugal already when I somehow bumped into this work offer of the CSA here in Hitzacker. And yeah, that's when I immediately felt like this resonance. Yeah, that could be something. And then I called up Juli's husband, and yeah, 10 days later I was in Hitzacker already. And then yeah,
We actually signed your flat contract before you signed our contract.
that's true. That's true.
Very trusting.
This piece of land was already here, and it's always here and not used for more than 15 years. It belongs to a former farm on the other side of the road. And then it was too small for normal agricultural usage, and it was too much in the city as well, and that was perfect for us actually.
We are in our first season. We started with the planning in January only. I came in December, we started in January, and then we had 45 members, 45 shares already in February, and now we are at the kind of end of our first season with 65 shares. We're supplying 65 households with veggies.
We will see. We know from other CSAs or from people who went off from these CSAs that they sometimes said, okay, it's too big, I don't know the others anymore, I don't feel that this is a community. And also we have this land, and we're very proud that 1/3, I think, of all the members we have walking distance to this area to get their vegetable once a week.
We harvest for the members once a week. They come here to the field to pick up their box, and there are some veggies that are abundant, and then sometimes we offer the members also to harvest some stuff for themselves.
We try to keep this 3 hours we have to pick up the vegetables also as a community institution, and there's also supports in the gardening as well. No?
Yes.
I would really recommend just to start. That's actually, we started with nothing. You couldn't really imagine that it will work. And we said,
it was
okay,
bare
just
land,
dig.
really.
Yeah.
Just brown patch of earth. Yeah.
And we also incorporated all the other farmers here who are not doing biological agriculture to take part of. We try to get a good relationship to them, and I think you really mentioned it very well. That they didn't feel like being taught by us that this is much better what they do, but that they are also part of agriculture community, even if they have another approach.
Mm-hmm. I really would like to drastically reduce our water consumption here in the producing of vegetables, and therefore I would love to install drip irrigation for big parts of the field, and combine that with a mulch. But you as climate farmers and maybe as people who can donate for us, maybe you could help us with financing the whole drip irrigation. And yeah.
Do you have a rough idea how much that would cost?
I would say it would be around about €1,000 for big parts of the field, yeah.